Bhagavad Gita class, chapter 5, text 22. Yehi samsparshaja bhogha dukkayonaya evate adyantavantha kaunteya nate shuramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. In this verse, Krishna gives the definition of an intelligent person. We know from Varnashram, the intelligent classes of society are the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. Shudras are not considered intelligent, not because they're uneducated, but because the Sudra mentality is that they do indeed take part in the sources of misery. They seek and are addicted to taking part in the sources of misery to receive and experience pleasure. In the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we see Krishna talking about what it means to be an intelligent person with Arjuna. He says to Arjuna, my dear Arjuna, why is it that you're talking about things that are of a temporary nature? You're talking about happiness and distress pertaining to the body. This is not at all befitting an Aryan. Arjuna was a Kshatriya. Krishna is calling Arjuna Kaunteya, Pandava, son of Pandu. Arjuna should know better. He is supposed to be an intelligent person. An intelligent person does not take part, does not seek pleasure from the sources of misery. What does that mean, the sources of misery? Adhyatmaka. These are misery that comes from the body, disease, viruses, from the mind as well. Anxiety, depression, resentments, so on. Adibhotika. Miseries coming from other living entities, right? Walking down the street and being set upon by a moron. Adidaivika. Experiencing miseries from Mother Nature, right? Things outside of our control, acts of God, so to speak. Adidaivika. These are the three sources of misery. An unintelligent person seeks to have pleasure from the material body, from their mind, seeks pleasure from other living entities, seeks pleasure from, as much as possible, getting favor from the demigods. A less intelligent person seeks pleasure from these places. That is less intelligent. An intelligent person does not seek pleasure from these three places. They're only sources of misery. But there is a valid question that arises. We are the living entity, the Jivatma is Ananda Maya. Ananda, bliss, Maya, energy. We are by nature pleasure seeking. We are Ananda Maya. Krishna is Ananda Maya. If we are inherently pleasure seeking, yet our reality is Adhyatma, Adibhotik, and Adidaiva. That is our material reality. These three categories together combine to make our experiential material reality. If this is our reality, how do we, or from where do we derive pleasure? If we cannot derive from this material reality, where do we derive pleasure? This is a valid question. There is a school of thought that says, yes, we are Ananda Maya, and we want to be intelligent, right? The definition of an intelligent person is that they do not pursue pleasure in the sources of misery. Where do we pursue pleasure? So there's a school of thought, a religious process that says, negate, get rid of adhyatma, get rid of my material body, get rid of my individuality, then I no longer have to experience misery from adhyatma. They say get rid of the individuality of other living entities. Then I do not have to experience the misery of being in connection with other living entities. They say do away with, negate adidaiva, the idea of a supreme, spiritual, overarching God or demigods. If we dispense with that, then we also do not have to deal with the miseries that come from that. This is, in essence, an idea of shunyavad, where we merge into some kind of spiritual reality, and we do not have to experience the misery of adhyatma, adibodha, adidaiva. So this is one very prominent religious spiritual path. Vaishnavas do not take to that idea. The question is valid. From where do we get pleasure? But negating adhyatma, adibodha, and adidaiva is not what the Vaishnavas answer, how the Vaishnavas answer that question. Krishna answers that question. He doesn't answer it in this verse. In fact, he doesn't answer it for several verses, and indeed, one could say for a few chapters. But he does answer this question. We have to go to chapter 10, text 9. Madchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantas chamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. It is quite interesting that in both verses, this verse and in chapter 10.9, the Sanskrit word ramate arises. In this verse, Krishna says, Nateshu ramate buddhaha. In chapter 10, text 9, Krishna says, Tushanti cha ramanti cha. Ramate means pertaining to pleasure. In chapter 10, text 9, Krishna says, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. That is how Vaishnavas derive pleasure. So in summary, a Vaishnava does not deny their present material reality, even as they relish and delight in the glories and association of the Lord and the Lord's devotees. So the Vaishnava is not about negating adhyatma, adibodha, and adidaivaka. That's irrelevant for a Vaishnava, who is extraordinarily intelligent. The Vaishnava takes pleasure in their association with Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Now, of course, and this is another class for another time, if we are not deriving pleasure from our sadhana, if we're not deriving pleasure from our devotional activities, if we're not deriving pleasure from the association of devotees in Krishna, that is a problem, right? We are not having a taste. There's no ruchi. There are 4 reasons why we're not experiencing pleasure, but that's another topic for another time. The key is that a Vaishnava derives pleasure from their association with Krishna and Krishna's devotees, not from the 3 sources of misery. Hari Hari.